Happy New Year, Utah football fans. On today's show, before we can talk about what we hope to see in 2025, let's rewind back to one of the latest, craziest transfer portal chaotic situations I can remember that closed out Utah football in 2024. And we'll react to some news that a Utah running back is going to a Big 12 rival. All that and more on the first episode of Locked On Utes in 2025.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning in, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of your YouTube comments, as well as on social media. We can follow our show on X at Locked On Utes. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Athlon Sports' Elijah Grayson Murray. Does a great job covering Utah football. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you had a great New Year's night, and really excited to begin a new year of talking about this Utah football team. But before we talk about our excitement for 25, and I do want to talk about some resolutions that I hope that Utah football has and things they need to make changes if they want to get back to being a conference contender, as well as we'll react to some news of a Utah back going to Arizona. But first, just Elijah, I could not believe what we saw happen with Taeshaun Lyons, the four-star wide receiver who spent his first year with the Huskies when they went on the national championship run. He's a receiver, so understandably didn't play because they had in one of the best receiving corps we'd seen in college football in a long time too, led by Roma Dunze, who's on the Bears this year. So a really good receiving corps. He didn't play. He transfers for Utah last offseason, so we're really excited about him. He actually makes a catch in his very first game too, but doesn't produce a ton after that. And Utah's passing attack, obviously the quarterback situation was not ideal in the slightest last year, but there was still hope. Okay, hopefully he'll come back to Utah next year. And we hadn't heard a lot through the transfer portal, but he ends up deciding to transfer. Wait, no, he doesn't. 2 hours later, pulls his name out of the portal. Oh, looks like Utah got him back. And then, no, they don't. He ends up entering the portal the following day. So basically 24 hours later, he does put his name in the portal. He's staying there. He's probably leaving Utah now. It's a crazy situation, and in many ways it speaks to the problems with college football. But, yeah, this is one of the wildest processes I can remember watching and seeing if a player is going to stay with Utah, Elijah.
Yeah, 100%. And I still don't think anyone really even knows the reason for his flip. I think it most likely – like you mentioned when we were talking before the start of the show, is that it most likely was an NIL dispute in terms of how much money he would get for entering the portal. But it's insane. And I think it was the perfect microcosm for the current, landscape of college football. It needs to be fixed. And I think, the dude's really talented. Obviously, a four-star in high school. He has great measurables, and, he's still a young guy. I think I don't necessarily blame him for transferring with all the talent Utah got in the portal coming in at that position. He probably would have been unlikely to see the field again this year. Considering like Creed Whitmore, Otto Tia, all those guys coming in. But I mean, it sucks to lose a talent like that. But I think more than anything, just the fact of how it happened and the quick turnaround. I think everyone was confused. But also, I think it was also pretty funny how the laughs it generated with all the memes of like the Homer Simpson going in and right back out. So
that's exactly what it ended up being. I mean, it is wild, and I do agree. I think that would have been hard for him to see the field. I definitely didn't get a chance to, but look, when you just analyze and say, hey, Utah's added veteran talent through the portal, Tia being the guy I'm probably personally most excited to see what he can do in this offense next year. And then you could look and say, okay, well, he was a redshirt freshman last year, but still a freshman and trying to contribute. Well, he didn't contribute, though, because Zacharias Williams and Darren Zipper beat him out, or at least they did at the time. Maybe he could have beat them out and earned some snaps next year. But when you aren't beating out the other underclassmen, and then Utah's adding veterans who have already contributed or some that are just expected to contribute, that's where it was kind of hard and probable to see what he can do. So, yeah, it's disappointing to lose a talent like Lyons, but I agree with what we kind of talked about, Elijah, that I do think Utah's receiving core will be okay.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think the addition of Tia right after Lyons entered the portal the second time, I think, that kind of softened the blow because –
the Brian Windhorst, what does it mean?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that kind of softened the blow of his transfer. And I mean, Tia, I see him contributing right away. At
Mhm.
6'4", he's now the tallest guy in the wide receiver room. He replaced oh gosh, I forgot his name, but he replaced
Damian
someone.
Alford, who Utah's offense forgot about too.
Yeah, he replaced Alford, but there was another guy who was 6'4", and he was a
Munir,
senior.
not Munir McClain, right?
Yeah, Munir McLean. Yeah, so he replaced, him in terms of height, and obviously coming off of a breakout season at Utah State, already an in-state talent, so he knows, he's not, going to be having to get accustomed to the climate or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a great player right off the bat for Utah. And with Lions, I don't see him necessarily going to another Power Four program just because of the lack of tape that he has.
Mhm.
Based
I'd
on
be
what
surprised too.
posted on his X account, he had some good tape in practice, but in game, obviously, you don't really get the same outcomes necessarily. So, I mean, obviously, I wish him the best of luck. The guy is super talented. He's a great kid too. But I think even before the season ended, a lot of fans expected him to transfer just
Mhm.
based off of the Pittman situation where people thought it was like a 2-for-1 where they're both leaving, and so
Yeah.
I
The
don't
lack of
know.
playing time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think with the Lions thing, and you mentioned like he had some good practice tape too. And look, I hope he finds success elsewhere. But that was kind of even a viral challenge. I think I saw college athletes were posting like their best clip from practice. Like everyone has some good clips in practice. It's just like, can you make it around the field, stand out, and make plays when it matters most? He wasn't able to do that with Utah. Wish him the best in finding his next opportunity. But Elijah, before we talk about some of those resolutions I mentioned, I just still go back to just what happened. Like you had a player who entered the portal, exited the portal, and then entered it again. Like that to me is just, this is once again gets down to, it's a bigger than Utah conversation, but the changes we need in college football, right? Like, yes, guys become free agents and end up coming back to their teams, but just like, I wish there's got to be some kind of a rule or something in place to avoid these chaotic situations. We've had other players who would say, I'm going to Utah, and then they go to somewhere else. Was that a leverage play? Like, I don't know. But this is just, there is so much that needs to be fixed. It's complete chaos right now. And I would love to see the case being like, hey, if you enter the portal, you're in the portal. And then whichever, if you announce you're coming back, like you're back. Like I think if you make that announcement, you should be locked in there. I think that's how the rule change I would propose for it. Regardless of how you view the situation, I don't think anyone disagrees that it has to change. And what is just going on, not just with Lions, everywhere in the portal right now it's not good for college football.
Yeah, I don't think it's a reflection on Utah football as a program because it is, like you said, happening all over the college football
No.
landscape. I think also another example of flipping or using a team as leverage is Joseph Williams from Tulsa, who verbally committed to Utah and then went to Colorado. And he was a guy that I was super excited about because ACC or AAC Freshman of the Year. He was a super talented guy. But I agree. I think something needs to change sooner rather than later because this current Wild West style transfer portal is really ruining college football on multiple levels. I'm happy players are getting paid and they should get paid, but the way that it's going about, like even pros can't do this, and so the fact that you're allowing 18-year-old, 17-year-old kids to go free for all wherever they want. They should be able to go where they want, but
Yes.
with structure.
Yeah.
And I think that there's no structure right now. I believe like if you verbally commit to a team, that should be the team that you go to. You shouldn't just use that for leverage, and because it also messes with the program. And I don't know, it needs to be changed, and something needs to be happen sooner rather than later before this gets even more out of hand, which I can't even fathom how it can already get more out of hand.
You're right. I mean, commitments mean nothing. Like that should mean something when you make a commitment and announcement. And right now it doesn't mean it. And that's a problem. So that's simply what we're talking about here. But which line's the best? And it'll be interesting to see where he ends up landing. Want to keep this episode rolling, and we are going to talk about our Utah football resolutions. It's a new year, so everyone's making their resolutions, what they want to do, improve, yada, 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 basically. But what does Utah football? What are their resolutions? What do they want to improve on? That's what we're going to be talking about in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions. That's right. They've helped people save over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is that subscription tracker. I mean, how many times do we forget we're paying for a service? That's where it comes in, because it can cancel services that you're not using anymore. I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future goals with no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Elijah, talking about resolutions for Utah football, and as everyone's doing their resolutions for the upcoming year, right? For Utah football, I think my biggest resolution, I hope that Utah's biggest resolution is actually one that falls to Kyle Whittingham. Let Jason Beck run his offense. Too often in the past, we've heard of how controlling Kyle Whittingham is. I remember back in 23 when he was terrified to let Nate Johnson run because he didn't want him to fumble. And I get that. And sure, you squeak out a win against UCLA because you play conservative, but then down the line, you don't let him use his best weapon, so you go on the road and lose it in Oregon State because you're handicapping your offense when you could be even better if you let him go and let him operate and do what he's capable of doing. So to me, that's where I want to see Jason Beck be able to run his offense. I want to see Devin Dampier run frequently. You have to live with the turnovers that Dampier's going to have. He had 12 interceptions last year, but in some of the biggest games, he balled out. He's still growing and learning, and I believe he's not going to be playing his best in game one. Like the best version of Devin Dampier, I expect to be later in the season because this is a whole nother jump up in level in competition. So I want to see Jason Beck to get to run his offense to the full potential, let Utah spread it out a little bit, lots of quarterback runs, and I really hope that's what Kyle Whittingham is willing to let him do, because if Utah can play aggressive and play to their strengths offensively and defensively, they're going to be a force to reckon with in the Big 12.
Yeah, we kind of had similar ones. I was going to say, well, first of all, my personal Utah football resolution is to not read into spring camp so much.
We all do. We're all just starving for content for the fall. Like so we're all just, spring. So we're all just excited to have it back, and then it just we overreact.
This was my official first full Utah cycle covering Utah football, and so obviously at spring camp, you get all excited.
Which one do you look back on? Is there one you're like, oh man, I wish I didn't say that? While you remember yours, I'll tell you Kyle Whittingham's from a couple years ago. He called Mikey Matthews like Britton Covey. I think he would pull that one back if he could. So, and not even just because he transferred. Like Mikey Matthews just hasn't played up to that extent. And congrats to him. He's going off to UCLA now. But like everyone reacts to spring ball. You're not the only one.
Yeah. Well, mine. I mean, and this could have happened. Did we not have such bad injury luck? But I said that the rising to Singer connection would be the best in college football, and by the looks of it in spring camp, their connection was it was like beautiful, flawless football, and so that was one that, looking back, I mean, could have happened, but clearly didn't for injury stuff. But in terms of Utah football, I think you just have to move away from a super run heavy approach. I think you can go maybe 60% run, because that's the Utah football identity, and you have a solid 3 running backs that can get that done, who all have different levels of play. Parker and the UNLV running back, and the New Mexico running back as well. You have all those guys coming in, and they can all do great things in the backfield. But I would just like to see, with how much receiving talent we have, including Landon King, Dorian Singer could potentially come back if the NCAA gives him his waiver or whatever. And then you have Otto Tia, Creed Whitmore, Drayden Zipper, you have Zacchaeus Williams, you have all these guys. And last season, I think that was one of the most frustrating things to watch, is that you have all this talent. And I understand the quarterback situation was a mess, but you still, despite that talent, a quarterback doesn't have to be amazing in order to get that talent, going. And so I think just use the pass more. That's what I would like to see. And I think you have the talent to do so. And you have the running back room to open it up to where you can pass and you don't have to just rely on the run.
No, totally agree. I want to see Utah aired out more for sure this coming year. And I think for other Utah resolutions, the portal is closed a couple days ago, but just continuing to add and grow talent. I've talked before. I want Utah to add a veteran backup. I am pleased with the quarterback they added from Oklahoma. He redshirted this last year. We got no experience. So I want to find a veteran backup, if that's an FCS guy, whatever. Just a guy who's played college football you can bring in to at least give some competition to guys who haven't yet. Because obviously we saw with Wilson last year, and Rose even at times too, like the game against Houston. Like if you're not experienced, you're going to go through some growing pains. So outside of that, what else to, just continue to try and work on the receiver room. I think Utah needs to. I'd still want them to add an interior offensive lineman if they can. I like the running back room right now. I would love for them to add another tight end, but that's not as Jason Beck's offense isn't always prioritized tight end as much. And you have Landon King back, so you might just be good with your one tight end. You still have Dallin Bentley in that room too. Defensively, depending on what happens with Tanuvasa, one more D tackle if Utah can land there. Another linebacker since you lost Tony Reed. And DB wise, I'm actually pretty good in the secondary. I love the way Rabbit Evans played to close the year. So, and Teo Johnson is coming back unless he's going to declare for the draft, and I like Teo, but just based on the way he played, I don't see him declaring. So those are kind of my roster New Year's resolutions too. And obviously I'm hoping that Utah can send out Kyle Whittingham on the right note. We heard he nearly left after this year, didn't go his way. So he's giving it one more run. I mean, I think those are the biggest resolutions that Utah has for my money too. Is there any other roster building ones, Elijah, that you look at, or which ones of the ones I rattled off would you prioritize?
For me, middle linebacker would be the biggest need. Now, I think they did a lot in the portal in this window to really address a bunch of offensive needs. The defensive line could potentially need another big guy should Tanuvasa actually leave. I think we dodged a bullet by Smith Snowden not being persuaded into the portal. I think he could potentially be our best cornerback going into 2025. But I mean, right now, I feel like this has been kind of a weakness for Utah on defense for a few seasons. But the linebacker spot, Barton is amazing, and I think that with another off season, should he not go into the draft, I think he will get back to the talent that he displayed and that he promised coming into Utah. But I just don't like the depth that we have there. And I don't.
Dumuni coming off an injury, right? Like he's good, but like we're just concerned. We want extra insurance.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you have Jonathan Hall, who he's good. Up and down. And hopefully with an off season at that full off season at the position, he can kind of be more solidified there. But I would like to just get one more guy there to shore up that position, because I honestly think that might be the most important position on the field for defense. It's kind of like the quarterback of the defense. And so, once you shore up that middle, I think the defense is set. As long as you can retain Tanuvasa, or at least get someone who can plug in that role as best as possible.
Yeah, and then you hope some of the corners you add in the transfer are ready to step up, because Utah obviously did lose Cameron Calhoun, which that one still hurts, of course, too. So those are our Utah football resolutions. Drop yours below. Drop your New Year's resolutions too. Drop as well. All big one happy family here at Locked On Utes, and appreciate all of you continue to stick around on the show during the offseason. One player who did not decide to stick around was Mike Mitchell, as he has entered the transfer portal and he is off to the University of Arizona. So he is a Wildcat now. So a little bit of a Big 12 rivalry there. Mitchell with Utah last year was kind of RB2. He was second on the team in carries with 47. Though it is crazy the disparity between him and Mekhi Bernard. Mekhi had 197 carries, and then it goes to Mitchell's 47 after that. And just talking with Mitchell, he had 158 yards, averaged 3.4 yards per carry. Did get in the end zone one time. Former 4-star back, and it's tough to lose him. But I feel like Utah add other running backs. Wayshawn Parker, I do expect to be better. this next year than Mike Mitchell would have been. So while would it have been nice to keep Mitchell? Yes. But I understand this from everyone around. There weren't a lot of carries to go around with the veteran backs that Utah added, and Mitchell going into year 3 now, but still not, I wouldn't consider a veteran, even though he has a little bit of experience. So I think this makes sense for all parties involved, Elijah.
Yeah, I love Mike Mitchell. He was my first ever interview.
Oh, cool.
So he's a great kid. But I mean, I think what really hurt him this season was just having that nagging injury that didn't allow him to play, a full 3 downs when Bernard, needed a rest. And so I think he did show signs of being, living up to his 4-star potential, but that injury really did not help his development or his chance to stay on the squad with how many additions. And the complete rebuild of the room. I think he will do good at Arizona. They brought in the Eli Sanders too, right?
They did. That's
They
right.
did.
How about that? Good memory.
Yeah, so that's going to be, if Mitchell can stay healthy, that's going to be a really good 1-2 punch at the RB position for the Wildcats. I don't think it's too big of a loss for Utah considering how they rebuilt the room. I think it would have been great to keep him just because he is super talented, and we don't know because we are getting completely new faces in the room. But I think, more than anything, it's a tough loss, but it's also an expected loss considering who we added. And I wish him nothing but the best down in Tucson.
Yeah, at best was RB3 on this team to me.
Yeah.
We used to talk about Parker, and Utah's added other guys too, where I'm just like, okay, right now, better than Mike Mitchell. Like Mike Mitchell, hope he reaches and hits his potential. And the injury, like you said, definitely brought him down a little bit from what he was probably able to do, but it wasn't like when he was out there, I didn't feel like, okay, that was a 4-star. Can he reach that at Arizona? Absolutely. But he didn't with Utah. And that's part of the reason probably Utah was okay. Moving on for him, he gets an opportunity now at Arizona, and I feel like both sides will have a chance to succeed. And it'll be interesting to see if he can have a revenge game too. He's going to be and even Eli, right? Maybe he wanted to come to. Maybe Arizona offered more NIL. Like, we don't know what happens, right? Maybe Arizona offered more NIL so that Eli wasn't able to come over to Utah. So maybe he'll view that as a revenge game too.
I am mistaken. Arizona was in the top 2 for Eli Sanders, but he went to USC.
Oh, that's right.
So yeah, Mitchell will potentially be the RB1 in Arizona.
There we go. It did come down to the final 2. And they were in it with Taeshaun Parker too.
Yes, they were.
So they're right there as well. So yeah, kind of came down to the wire there. It was interesting to see how it played out. But Utah down and back, but still liking what they've done with the rebuilt backfield coming into the season. What Coach Utah has done a really good job there. I'm excited and optimistic about him and the rest of this Utah offense and this Utah team in general. I'm an optimistic person. If you've watched the show for long enough, you guys have probably figured that out by now. Just like I'm optimistic about 2025 and very much so about Utah football's future. Elijah, there's always stuff going on right now. It really isn't an off season. If people want to try and keep everything organized, where should they head over to?
Yeah, you can follow me on my Twitter at Elijah G. Murray. I cover pretty much all happenings with Utah football, especially during their offseason and spring camp. And now that I'll be back in school for spring semester, I'll get basketball going and women's basketball going and all that stuff. So for, really all Utah athletics, you can get the news on my on my profile. I write about that, but football is obviously the main focus. So for any off-season, happenings, it'll most likely be on my account.
Awesome. Thank you, Elijah. Appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Hope you all have a wonderful New Year's Day. We'll be back with you tomorrow, breaking down the latest Utah football-related news. Until then, thank you for tuning in to Locked On Utes. We hope you'll join us then.